We've also had another text message from Gamal who said, why are non-whites given harsh sentences?
I think the reason for that is one that I sort of indirectly spoke about earlier, where people from a minority community are appearing before judges and waiting to be sentenced. The facts, the government's own facts, their own statistics, are showing that you are more likely to be sent to prison immediately. Now, this is very worrying. If on a like-for-like comparison with white defendants, Asian defendants and black defendants are being treated more harshly.
That's terrible.
And if people want to know why that's happening, we need to ask the judges who are giving those sentences, because those judges are given these days very good training on diversity awareness. They know what their responsibilities are in removing from themselves any discriminatory attitudes. If they are not converting that training into practice when they sit in a court with a wig on their head and a gown around their shoulders, and they're looking at a defendant across the courtroom who's in a dock, and they're making assumptions about that defendant that he's more dangerous to the community or he's someone who deserves to be punished more severely, and they're treating them worse than they would a white defendant, well, that's wrong. I am a great believer in the inherent fairness of our system, and fairness sometimes means you have to be tough. It means that if someone's done something that's really wrong, then they need to be punished for that, and they need to be rehabilitated as well to protect the community in the long term. So I'm not one who will stand up and say, look, Asian defendants and black defendants should be treated, lightly because they've had a hard time and they come from impoverished communities. The reality is that most crime is committed within ethnic communities on each other.
Yeah.
It's often the case that when you have violence, it's on each other. And so we need to protect our own communities from those amongst us who are perpetrating crime, and they sometimes need to be punished severely. But if there's a discrepancy between the way they're treated and an equivalent white defendant, that can't be right on anyone's judgment.
I think one thing comes out of what Joe said, that we've touched on this before, that our community, the Asian community in this country, has sort of very quietly gotten on with its own business, never really engaging fully to share its own values in the much wider political and social world. And I think that touches on this as well. We need more people to come forward and prevent these things from just disappearing. They need to be emphasised, highlighted, and brought out, and then actually approached. I was sitting with the Minister of Justice. We have a new Asian Minister of Justice now, Shailesh Vara, who's doing wonderful work for our communities on this particular area. And he was saying that 10% of the contribution to the Exchequer comes from the South Asian community. And yet a tiny, tiny proportion of that contribution is ever drawn on by the community itself. So it's a wonderful community to have on your P&L, profit and loss statement. But he was also emphasising that we need as a community to stand up and say, we're part of this country, we're part of this system, and these are the things that we need. So it seems that that's also necessary in the legal arena now.
I entirely agree. Can I say, Satish, on that particular point, one of the big subjects at the moment, of course, is immigration.
Yes.
And as the election next year, the general election draws nearer, immigration will become a more and more talked about subject and be right at the top of the political agenda for all the parties. And these issues of immigration and crime and whether we're making a contribution to the community are all interconnected.
Yes.
We need to be more confident about telling the wider community what positive contribution we are making to this society. Many of us have been here for 2 or 3 generations now, and we've made a huge input. But our contribution, this is something I really have a strong belief in. Our contribution must be measured not merely by the things which add value in terms of money. Of course, we're incredibly successful as a community in business, but we must also measure our success and progress by the softer values, such as, are we penetrating all the professions within society? Are we going into politics? Are we going into media? Not just into the traditional so-called Asian professions. And if we believe it's important for us to diversify within the wider community, we need to do what we can to facilitate that. So I appreciate Mr. Vara's genuine commitment to that ethos. I hope as a junior Minister for Justice, he's going to do what he can to protect legal aid so that we continue to attract lots of young Asian lawyers into the big professions.
Great. Yeah, so
the text are
just coming
in.
non-stop. A lot of people have got a lot to say. So this text is from Joe, and Joe asks, what can we do when Indians in flash cars are stopped all the time by police, as I have been? That's as Joe has been.
Well, thank you for that, Joe. We'll put that one over to our Joe. Have you ever been stopped in a flash car?
I have never driven a flash car,
okay.
so I've never had the experience. Can I say this, however, that My advice generally would be to anyone and everyone who finds themselves stopped by the police, whether it's on the street or in a car, to observe some basic principles. One, don't lose your temper. Two, speak clearly, firmly and calmly when the officer asks you questions.
So chastising him roundly in Punjabi doesn't work?
No, unless the officer, of course, is a Punjabi-speaking police officer, which is increasingly happening in London, but not at anything like the rate that I'd like to see. But I think it is important that you stay calm. You need to familiarise yourself with your own rights. Okay, we all have a responsibility as citizens not to wait to be told what our rights are. Go and find out what your rights are. Google stop and search. Google my rights if I'm stopped by a police officer. And you may find some very good advice. If a police officer asks you for your name and your details, give them, because if you don't, you could be arrested for failing to provide your name and details. But if the officer's stopping you and you feel it's unfair, feel confident enough to say, "Officer, could you tell me why you have stopped me?" And if you're not happy with the answer, you're entitled to ask for further particulars and say to them, "I'm sorry, but, there's nothing wrong with my brake light. Show me what's wrong with my brake light. Is that the reason why you pulled me up?" And it's okay to have a conversation as long as you have it calmly, all right? Sometimes the police will be looking just for an excuse to stop somebody so that they can check your car over or to check your pockets on the street. And be aware of that. And also, don't be afraid to ask for their name and their badge number. All right?
Okay, thank you very much, Joe. I think that's useful advice, and definitely I'll keep that in mind as well, since I've got a new car as well. It's not that flash, but
We have a caller online, I believe. Alka?
Oh, hello. Hi, no, it's Alka.
Oh, Alka.
Hi, Alka.
Welcome to the show. Good afternoon.
Oh, thank you.
Well, what would you like to share with Joe?
Actually, it's a very interesting program. It's food for thought.
Thank you.
The thing is, I'm really concerned after hearing you for the past 45 minutes. My son is thinking of going into law. At the moment, he doesn't know whether he wants to be a solicitor or a barrister. I don't know. I think when you start listening to this conversation, that worries me a bit.
Alka, can I tell you, I spend quite a bit of my free time. I don't have a lot of free time, but I do spend what I have trying to get out to universities and campuses and speak to students about the legal profession as an alternative to what they might otherwise be thinking about, or to give them more information about what actually is involved on a day-to-day level in being a lawyer, as a barrister or a solicitor. And I don't believe in giving people glossy brochures and tricking them into thinking that everything is rosy and that you get to wear a wig on your head and a gown around your shoulders and it's all really easy to break into. It's not. It's a very competitive profession. One has to remember that there are only about 15,000 barristers in this country, and there's well over 150,000 solicitors. So the barrister's profession that I'm a member of is quite a minority profession. But within the barrister's profession, Alka, about 11% of our numbers are black or ethnic minority practitioners.
That's a very small number.
No, well, actually, if you think about it, Alka, we are only 7% of the population. If we're getting 11% of the numbers of barristers being from the minority communities, that's not a bad figure at all. Again, Alka, what it represents is the overachievement in some respects of Asian people. You see it within the National Health Service, where about 1 in 4 doctors is of Asian origin. We are incredibly successful when we do get into the professions. But I think it's really important for young people who are thinking about becoming lawyers to get all the information they can to work out what their prospects are. So the worst thing would be to say to someone, come into the barrister's profession, spend a lot of money on getting trained up, and then there's no job waiting for you. What you need to do is to think about what it is you want to do as a practitioner. Do you want to represent people within the criminal justice system, or do you want to do, for example, civil work, family work, employment work, or commercial work, which is, of course, mainly privately funded work, where the pressures of legal aid don't really have the same impact at all. So there are a lot of choices out there, and I think your son, if he's serious about becoming a lawyer, must equip himself with all the knowledge he can. And there are conferences and conventions that I speak at where there are opportunities to come and listen to experienced minority practitioners like myself who can tell them...
Would that be for like the 15 and 16-year-old who are doing their A-levels? Because, my son's doing GCSEs and will be doing A-levels and be applying to university next year.
Yeah.
So do you actually cater for them rather than for the older ones?
We tend to deal with mainly law undergraduates. We then tend to be less involved in schools, because at schools level, of course, young people are making decisions which could end up in one direction or many other directions. So we tend to concentrate on those who have already made a decision that they're interested in coming into law. And the real question arises, Alka, whether they become a solicitor or a barrister or some other related profession to the law. And that's where I think the maximum help can be given to them.
Thank you for that, Joe. And Alkaji, I think more than ever, it's coming down to what's his passion, because it's getting harder and harder in every profession. If he can hook up with a passion.
The one thing I wanted to ask is how easy is it for children, at his age, to get work experience as well?
I think I'll tell you this, just on a last note about advising for your son. If he wants to get work experience, the best thing he can do is during his holidays, he should try and get some work experience in local solicitor firms around where you live. So he can contact them from looking in the local directory, find out the local solicitors, and see if he can get maybe a week of being around an office to pick up some experience. That's the best thing.
Alkaji, thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Alka. Bye. We've just quickly got time to read out one more text message. We've had a text from Suresh. He said, is there an old boys network operating in the judiciary?
Is an old boys network operating in almost every top profession. If you go to the medical establishment, I think you'll find that. The political establishment, you'll find it again. There isn't an old boys network in the sense that, almost like the Freemasons, if you have a special handshake, you're in, and if you don't, you're out. Okay. It doesn't quite work like that. Looking at it more objectively, what you have is a judiciary which still, generally speaking, is white, is male, is from a public school educated background, and often Oxford or Cambridge graduates. And that has to change. And so to that extent, of course, they are from a similar background and therefore will share similar values and a similar ethos, but they are being re-educated, if I can put it that way, more and more by the programs that are set up by the Ministry of Justice and by the judiciary generally to improve their understanding of diversity issues, so they're more sensitive. But I don't think you will see the real changes we need until our Asian and black lawyers climb up the ranks and get themselves into positions within the judiciary. They will then, by sheer force of numbers, literally change the complexion and change the culture that operates at a higher level.
I think there are old boys networks in almost every profession, really, except from midwifery, which I imagine is hard to break into. But no, thank you for that. I think we have some more texts still coming in.
There's one from Francis. He said, can we not get funding from the EU for legal aid? And is that a possibility, or will there be too many strings attached, I think?
The legal aid budget is administered here nationally.
Okay. And
so at the moment, the Treasury and the government are looking to cut across the board throughout any departments that are providing publicly funded services. And so our legal aid is administered through a body called the Legal Aid Agency. And of course the Ministry of Justice, Mr. Vara, and all of those people, Mr. Grayling, of course, who is his boss, are responsible for that budget and protecting that budget when there are rounds of cuts. And we are appealing to those ministers to understand how important it is for all sorts of reasons, for clients, for communities, and yes, of course, for the legal profession to remain diverse, that they should protect the legal aid budget so that people like your caller and your texters, if they need help, can get it in the future.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that.
Well, it's been a very fast and furious 1 hour. It's disappeared very, very quickly. Thank you to all of our callers for texting in and sharing those messages. And we have enjoyed having you, Joe. I'd just like to say a quick word of thanks very much for sparing some time in your very, very busy schedule. We understand how busy it is. And this is the Reasonable Conversation. We're coming to an end this Sunday. And we look forward to having you join us on a Reasonable Conversation next week.
Yes, and next week we'll be talking about immigration, which Joe touched upon briefly. And I think there's a new immigration bill going through Parliament, which has wider implications for removal of citizenships. So we look forward to hearing all your views and comments. Do text us in advance. The number's 07961 387 787. And you can tweet us and join our Facebook page too. Thank you very much, Joe. It's been great having you.
You're very welcome. It's been delightful being here.